Okay, next question.
Yes, thank you. Peter Horvath, class of 77. I've been representing people charged with crimes for about 4 years. One thing I've learned about crime is that it's a steady flow, and a never-ending flow of that behavior. And so, in my view, criminal laws are, by and large, not designed to prevent crime, but rather to make a statement by society in general, and the legislature in particular, about how society feels about that crime, and how legislators feel about that particular crime. For example, drunk driving laws, we've seen a lot of activity over the last couple of years. Penalties have become much more severe. Suspensions have gone up. The test for taking the breath test has gone down. And that's a statement in society in general, legislatures in particular, that drunk driving is stupid and dangerous. Conversely, the drug abuse laws, the statutes have made some dramatic changes in the last few years. The judges are prohibited from putting first offenders and felon enforced crimes in prison. It must be on probation. That's a statement by society, general legislatures in particular, that confinement is not a term for drug abuse, but rather some kind of treatment, which is appropriate. Same thing with expungement laws, again, statement by society and legislatures that people convicted of crimes should be allowed to have their convictions sealed. Abortion laws, same thing. Abortion laws don't make abortion illegal. They simply are a statement that men are still in charge of women's reproductive rights. Marijuana laws, I think that's pretty obvious. My question is, when you look at the balance to gun laws and firearm laws, to my mind, there's not been a lot of activity over the last few years. We've seen some activity with respect to duty to retreat and using deadly force. We've seen some activity about carry conceal. But to my mind, I've not seen a lot of activity. I've seen some activity with respect to gun laws and use of firearms. My question is, if moderators agree with me that there is a statement, or perhaps a lack of a statement, from society in general, and legislation in particular, whether it be federal or state, with respect to the use of guns and the ramifications that we've seen about the years about the consequences of firearms.
I think there has actually been a statement. I think there's been a very powerful statement over the past 30 years, and the statement has been that by and large, Democratic majorities of people want for it to be increasingly easy for people to acquire and to carry firearms. If you look back to the early 1980s, there were very few states where you could easily obtain a permit to carry a firearm. I believe it was in 1987 that Florida became the first state the first major state to adopt what's called a shall issue permitting system, which essentially means that anyone who satisfies some objective set of criteria, no criminal background, no mental health problems, is entitled to a permit to carry a firearm. Over the ensuing 30 years, we went from almost no states with that kind of a shall issue permitting regime to now today we have either 38 or 39 states that have a shall issue permitting system, and even a dozen states within that 39 where there's no permitting. It's not a dozen, it's more like 8 or 10 depending on how you count. But there are 8 or 10 states now where there's no permitting system at all. You can just carry a gun wherever you want within the state. You don't have to get a concealed carry permit. You don't have to get any kind of a permit. So we've seen the number of guns in private ownership increase dramatically in the last 30 years, but we've seen the ability of ordinary people to carry firearms outside of their homes has vastly transformed. As I said, over the last 30 years, we've gone from a situation where there were almost no states where one could easily do that to where it's now about 38 or 40 states where basically anybody without a mental health problem or a criminal background can get a permit to carry a firearm, or doesn't even need a permit to carry a firearm. And I think that amounts to a statement, not necessarily a referendum, and certainly there are some states like California and New York that have gone the other way. But on balance, the movement in this country has been very much in the direction of liberalizing people's ability to acquire and carry firearms. I think this is a pretty big can of worms, but I will just say this. The predictions that were made by people when this trend was beginning in the late 1980s in terms of what we would see by way of increased violence, deaths by firearm, et cetera, have been roundly falsified. In fact, the number of deaths by homicides have been dropping dramatically for the past 30 years. That includes both accidents and homicides. And we've just not seen any of the negative consequences that were predicted by those who thought that this change in policy was a bad idea. So I do think we do have a statement. I think it's been a rather clear and powerful statement. And the empirical predictions of those who thought that it was a bad policy to move in the direction of liberalizing people's ability to acquire and carry firearms, those empirical predictions have not been borne out, and to the contrary, they've been falsified.
Well, I'd like to just say something that bears really on the last three questions that were asked. If the question about what is reasonable and therefore good legislation, and therewith constitutionally permissible restrictive legislation, is guided by a consideration only of the danger to public peace in people's having guns, that's an incomplete consideration, because any kind of right to own guns does pose such a danger. That consideration, taken as the exclusive consideration, would reduce the Second Amendment to a nullity. I don't think that the American people, I'm not very good at making predictions. I made one public prediction as a member of the Garfield Institute. It turned out to be wrong. But I'll venture another one here. I don't think that the American people would tolerate that, and I think that they would look to the courts and to their legislatures for preventing that from happening, because it seems to me that the American people still do feel, as did the framers, that there is a natural right to self-defense when government fails to provide it, or even against government. Mr. Neely and I had a little dust-up a moment ago as to whether the Constitution explicitly recognizes that natural right. I'm not backing down from my earlier statement that it doesn't and can't, but it does exist. It's in the Declaration of Independence, which I think we still do hold as even more fundamental than the Constitution. And insofar as people do think that the Declaration of Independence recognizes a natural right, unalienable natural right, to our own lives and our own freedom and our own pursuit of happiness by our own rights and by our own powers, if such should be called for, I think people will not give up the tools to make that right effective should the eventuality occur.
All right. On that note, we are at time for this event, so if you'll join me in a round of applause. Both of the gentlemen, my sincere thanks. I want to express my sincere thanks. Been up here for too long for this presentation. This has been absolutely fascinating, and I really appreciate making it happen despite the fact that there were some technical difficulties. So, Clark, we will let you go to your family and to your life, but thank you again. It's been a real pleasure. We'll cut you loose at this point. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all of you. It's been a great pleasure, and it's clearly my loss that I wasn't able to be there in person and won't be able to join you for dinner, but thank you for the opportunity to be involved.
Okay, thanks again.
Thank you.
Also note, I mentioned earlier that I'm sitting in on John Kortansky's class on Plato, and in that class, it's an extraordinary educational experience just to be able to sit in there and listen to what John has to say about bringing the character of Socrates to life. And one of the things that Socrates does, that some of you know so well, particularly those of you who have the pleasure of sitting in that class with me, is he'll get into a conversation with a very formidable interlocutor. And he'll invariably start by saying he doesn't know that much about this topic and so forth, and this isn't his area of skill. And you'll very quickly find him, Socrates, drawing that person into very, very deep waters that other person was not anticipating. And it was such a pleasure to be able to showcase that talent which John embodies here at Hiram, embodies the best of Hiram. So I want to give him a special round of applause. Thank you. In the spirit of all things Kortansky, we will now be going to the Kortansky Hall, and you can see how he could still be alive and yet get a building named after him when he is, as he is. So we're going to have our cocktail reception and dinner there for anyone who made a reservation, and then after that we'll have a bit more conversation. So thank you all, and whoever who's coming over, just walk over now.